I have the scraps. This has been laying around for a long time. It's reasonably pretty. It was like, I have no idea what kind of wood. I have a piece of cherry, and I will try to make something. Maybe dagger, maybe not dagger, who knows. So I found this template. I will use one piece of wood for the blade, and then I use this cherry to make this part of the handle, and then I glue them together. So hopefully it will work. Hopefully. This was a very interesting project that I started thinking that I will only spend a few hours tops to actually make this nice dagger. But I ended up actually spending quite amount of time. I think I finished project in 3 different or even 4 separate sessions, but it was actually satisfying. So as you can see on what I'm just doing, I actually basically print out a template and then transfer this template on a piece of wood. So this one I actually don't exactly know what kind of wood it is, but it was a scraps from making a bowl. So the first step is obviously to roughly cut out the piece for the blade that I'm using here, and then I'll be working on a handle. Just a small caveat about the handle. So I picked this piece of cherry that was laying around in my workshop for quite a while, and I tried to make really following the example, following the sample that I had print out, but I kind of failed. Not exactly failed because I kind of picked the wrong wood, but the process itself I kind of went in the wrong direction. But we'll see. Maybe it's even actually better because the cherry wouldn't give me such a nice contrast that I actually end up having with the Cuban mahogany that I picked in the end. For the blade, I used mostly spoke shave, and it was one of the satisfying process and was very easy. The spoke shaves have different types. So this one has a little bit of rounded bottom. And because it's rounded bottom, I can do a little bit better job for this specific shape. I think one of the reasons I actually picked this project is just to play with the spoke shape, because it's so interesting and so easy to use tool. So if you haven't tried the spoke shape yet, just get it. It's a very cheap tool. You can get the new one for like $15 to $20 on Amazon, but it's really satisfying process and basically one of the most enjoyable processes. Of course, you still have to learn how to sharpen it, but it's not that complicated process. So there are a few problems you already can see what I'm doing. So before shaping, I should have started planing the surface of the blade. Well, I did in the end. It actually worked out. And then there's a long process to actually shape various parts of the blade. So I kind of selected this notch, and the next step I just wanted to remove a lot of material for the tang. And for the fun of it, I was using the dovetail saw to remove it. I think this was yet another mistake that I made, because I probably should not have removed this much of wood in here, and it would be actually way easier to create a bigger mortise in the handle and then just remove material from that, and potentially creating a contrast in part in the middle. Well, I didn't do that, so this time I was actually trying to make it a small tang that will be inserted as a mortise inside the handle and will be glued together. I kind of tried to put using a chisel to just remove material near the blade, and then use the hand plane to basically even out the material around. And finally, the next step is my failed attempt to make a handle. So I really tried to make a handle with this places or holes for the fingers, and kind of try to make it interesting in the first place. Using a blank after roughly shaping with my hand, so I used a little bit of chisel work to get the very intricate parts, and then switched to my rasps. Rasps, being quite a simple tool, allow you to remove material really quick. So this one is cherry, so it's not that hardwood, but even if it wasn't cherry, and as you will see how we're going to be dealing with the Cuban mahogany, which is much harder wood, it's way easier to deal with that. And then I went to the process that basically ruined this specific handle. So you will see in 1, 2, 3. So that was the failure. So basically, when I was drilling, I didn't pay attention. It went around, and it basically cracked the wood. So at this point, I kind of continued doing the job because I kind of had this piece of wood. I was hoping that it was a very tiny crack. So I basically tried to use my rasps to a little bit improve the kind of increase the holes that I created with the half-inch bit. But eventually I kind of gave up. But in any case, it was still quite interesting experience. I just tried to do some basic shaping. So as you can see, there's a very easy to go with rasp to shape this cherry. You cut like butter. It's almost like a butter. It's a little bit harder than that, but it's cut so nicely, so easily. So it was really hard for me to stop, even though I knew I should have stopped because this project will go nowhere. Yet I still continued at this point, did a lot of shaping, tried to use my block plane to actually clean up on the sides, on back and forth, and kind of at this point already realizing that this project is not gonna be using this handle. But again, I'm still continuing thinking about this, and I'm seeing that it's actually cracked in multiple places, not just in one finger. And then thinking, deciding, and basically abandoning this handle. Well, there is a design change, and this time I actually picked the Cuban mahogany. This is a piece I've been laying around, again, another piece of that been laying around at my workshop. And I think I made the really correct decision this time, because while I didn't do the notches for the finger because my material was a little bit less than for the cherry, but it also gave me much better contrast in the end with the piece of wood that I'm using for the blade. And so when you see the final product, you actually see this one is really nice. And cherry, I think cherry would be nice too, but this one is much better. So basically I repeated the process and did a lot of rasping work. I couldn't figure out actually the way how to create the mortise in this handle. I probably could do some level of mortising with just mortise and chisel, but then I kind of didn't trust myself, so I decided to resaw the handle. And it was a little bit challenging because it couldn't even create a center line because I already did the shaping. So I should have actually put the line before I did the shaping or did the split before. But in any case, I managed to do roughly half and half, and then did a little bit of cleanup, which was also a challenge because I could not even hold the piece. Okay, so again, I made so many errors. And then after I split the pieces, I actually created kind of notch for the half of the mortise, and then tried to use my router plane that I recently built to remove material and very nicely and create the surface for the glue. Using this homemade router plane was actually quite enjoyable process. So this one I followed the instruction by the James Wright. It wasn't that hard built. There's tons of simplifications I could have made, but again, use of it is extremely interesting, extremely easy. It has all the adjustments and knobs. So really good thing. I'm really happy that I made this router plane, and I'll be using it more and more later. And I just simply tried to make this half mortise equal on both sides. It took me some trial and error, and eventually I actually made it to work. This is supposed to be this nice wooden knife made of, I have no idea what this wood is, but it's pretty, and I kind of sharpen it correct. I mean, it looks right. Looks like on the picture. And the handle is a Cuban mahogany. So now, on the way of approaching the end of this project, I actually needed to glue up all those pieces with the blade in. So I just used my regular wood glue, put a lot of this wood glue so I have a lot of squeeze out. Carefully put the blade in, maybe a little bit messed up, put in there, and put a lot of pressure. So I used the 3 clamps. I think it went enough pressure. And just waited a long time. I basically waited overnight, so it's surely dried up. And wait. So the previous operation I had was to glue pieces of the handle together. Now the final stage is to actually smooth out everything. Oh, clean up all the glue, squeeze out. So it is a Dagger-ish thing. Not perfect, far from perfect, but I like it. One limitation of using rasp to shape a handle in this case is that rasp leaving really rough surface. So, and if I try to just directly use sandpaper for kind of this refining and shaping, it would take me forever. So basically I try to start with the files, which smooth out to a reasonable shape, and then continue it with the sandpaper, so several grits. Basically I did the files, which I'm not sure what kind of grit, then followed with a 120 grit sandpaper, then followed with a 220 very basically lightly sanding, and then final sanding I did with a 320, so kind of to get a really smooth surface. But okay, so that's almost final product, and now the most fun. I do not know how dark will be this part, seriously. I know color of this one. So this will be like pretty nice. This one, I hope it will be grayish, but we'll see. So at least I'm hoping with some contrast. So this side is okay. This side, okay, good. Contrast has been achieved. And apply shellac. Oops. Oh my gosh, I like it so much. I hope you like this project as much as I did, so please subscribe to my channel, and if you're really willing to, check my Etsy store. There are some items that you may be interested to. So the next thing I will try is to open a package with it.